Here I am now presenting a Jaguar XJS V12 as a collector's car. The very model that I introduced in Huddersfield when I was a Jaguar dealer back in 1988. All the first cars were white. They were £50,000, which was an incredible amount of money in those days. And I stayed with Jaguar right through to the early 1990s. What I'm going to do here really is I'm not going to compare this with anything other than a new Jaguar, because the cars that I drove of this kind were brand new XJS V12 convertibles. And so what I want to do is I'm going to give you a critique, and not having driven the car yet, I'm going to give you my impressions really on how it compares with the kind of cars I used to drive back in the late 80s. BMW were showing Jaguar a thing or two about handling in the late 80s, and Jaguar thought, you know what, we can stiffen some of our cars up and give them even better cornering and handling characteristics. What they decided to do when they were producing the convertible was to keep the original type of suspension, because to be honest with you, if you really stiffened up an open car like this, you'd end up with scuttle shake, which Jaguar didn't want. So actually driving a V12 convertible is quite like driving, let's say, a 1985 or 86 coupe. It's a much more traditional, softer, smoother ride. So I'll put this one through its paces and tell you what I think. Well, it doesn't really feel any different to how they felt all of those years ago. Very smooth, very quiet, turbine-like engine. There's really nothing any smoother than one of these. And although the coupes with the smaller engine, the 4 litre and 3.6 engines, got a ZF gearbox, the V12 stayed with its 3-speed GM 400, which was really a gearbox that was on top of the job. It could handle up to 400 horsepower, which was a lot more than this particular vehicle produced. And you do most of the driving really in third gear, in top gear. In a moment I'm just going to pull up, and I'm going to put up the roof so that you can actually hear what it's like in terms of ambient noise in the car when it's not open. Putting the hood up on one of these requires you to put the handbrake on, and then once the hood cover's been taken off, you simply press and hold this button. It's a wonderful mechanism. The actual design was by Carman, who of course made some fantastic hoods for cars in the 80s and early 90s. There's a couple of hooks here, so when you release that, you simply clamp that into position. Same on the other side. And then I'll close the window here. And we'll have a drive with the hood up. Well, driving this is really like driving one 30 odd years ago when I had them as demonstrators. It's an extremely windy day today, as you can probably see by my slightly dishevelled hair. And of course, in a convertible you get more wind noise than you do in a coupe. The only thing that I've noticed negatively on the car at all is a little bit of a whistle about here, to just above my and to the right of my head, and I'd want to just look at the one of the rubber seals there to see how well that's fitting. But in terms of the driving of it, it's absolutely wonderful. They have bushers on the steering rack, which if they get worn, you end up with slight sort of play, and they lose their sort of directional stability. This hasn't got that. It's had a fortune spent, and so it steers very precisely. Once I get past the railway crossing, I'm going to overtake someone who's in front of me driving quite slowly, and you'll just see the acceleration is absolutely astonishing. It is like having a turbine under the bonnet. Right, well, we've no one ahead. Drop down a gear. And there we are, I'm up to the national speed limit just as quick as that. Incredible. But it's very precise, very sure-footed. The handling is exactly as I remember it. It's showing 141,000 miles since new, and to be honest with you, I could be driving a 41,000 mile car, and if I didn't know what the real mileage was, it would completely fool me. So clearly a great deal of money has been spent to get this car into the sort of condition where it drives, well, almost like a new one. There are no strange noises on the transmission. Engine operating temperature's fine. It really feels good. It's a good paint finish. There are a couple of minor blemishes, the most serious of which is a scuff here. That definitely needs attention, and that's something that we could do. As you can see, it's scuffed against something right on the very edge of the wheel arch at the front there. That needs dealing with. Whilst that's been done, there's a couple of paint chips. These, I think, have been done by people's heels catching inside and out of getting out of the car. Nothing else on that side. On this side, there are a couple of paint chips on the driver's door edge. And there's also a little ping mark here. Don't know if you can see that in the reflection, but there's a little tiny ping there. The wheels are all in very good condition. The bonnet, in my view, needs adjusting. It's a clamp type bonnet, but it should be clamped a little bit tighter than that. So that's an adjustment. And there's also an adjustment required on the boot. Now, people slam XJS boots, and you shouldn't do. And if you do that, they go out of adjustment. And although they do normally sit a tiny bit proud, this is actually not as it should be. It should be at that position there. I don't know if you can just see on the joint when I pull it down. So that needs adjusting. And then what you would normally do when you close an XJS boot is you'd simply be able to press down and click it. There's a rather unusual mark here. It's like two vertical cuts, which I can't explain, but that on that rubber moulding there are two sort of vertical cuts in that. The hood and the hood cover are both really excellent, and as you can probably see, all the bright work is very good indeed. Stainless steel and chrome, all in really good condition. So external appearance wise, apart from that little graze I've shown you, there's very little to do to it. The interior, as you can see, has had a fortune spent. I mean, beautiful, beautiful retrim in leather. That must have cost a lot of money. The carpets have been replaced as well. They're in beautiful condition. The woodwork is far better than an original one would have been at this age, so that must have been redone. The cup holders, I think that's been added later because they didn't have that from the factory. The dash top roll there, that's also been reupholstered, and that's a fantastic job. The headlining in the hood, again, really, really good condition. Inside it's really lovely. A couple of minor things that detract from it. These little areas here, can you see that's a factory original sort of bit of cloth that goes on top of that, and on both sides it's come undone. I think that would be possible to rectify that and re-glue it. Driving the car, as I explained, fantastic, and nothing negative to say about it at all. It drives superbly. I did find a couple of minor faults. One of them, I mentioned, that's the stop lamp, the bulb warning, which is a stop lamp bulb out. And the other thing was the engine coolant light was on. Now, the engine coolant level is perfect, and what that is, it was a very common fault. It's the coolant level sensor, so that would need to be replaced. Just worth pointing out that on the edge of this seat there's just a couple of marks there where the handbrake has caught as it's been put on and off, and a couple of tiny bits here you can just see where people's bottoms have touched as they've gone in there, and perhaps a belt buckle, but it's nothing. Summing up, that's a gorgeous machine. It's really, really exceptionally good to drive. You can see where the money's gone in terms of the restoration that's been done, and with a few little detail bits and pieces which I've described in this video, I think this will be a very pleasurable motor car for someone to own and to have fun with. We have a company with, on 4 locations, the 3 other ones apart from where I'm filming this are in Malton itself, Malton Coachworks, and every car that we sell is sent there for preparation, mechanical servicing, MOT, but we also have a trim shop and we have a paint shop. So all of the things that I've pointed out, which are really minor defects on the car, they're all things that we are perfectly capable of sorting out.